Ever heard of the Mexican-American War? It's a conflict that often gets just a passing mention in history books, sandwiched between the age of Jackson and the looming Civil War. But what if I told you this war was one of the most consequential and controversial in American history? A war that doubled the size of the United States and set it on a path to becoming a global power. But also a war that many at the time, including future President Abraham Lincoln and famed author Henry David Thoreau, condemned as a land grab, an act of aggression, in America's first Imperial War. Today, we're going to unpack this complex and pivotal moment. This is the story of a war fueled by ambition, ideology, and a concept that defined an era, manifest destiny. In the 1840s, America was a nation bursting with energy and a sense of divine purpose. The idea of manifest destiny was in the air, a belief that the United States was destined by God to expand its dominion and spread democracy and capitalism across the entire North American continent. It was a powerful, intoxicating idea. And the biggest prize in the eyes of expansionists was the vast, sparsely populated territory belonging to its southern neighbor, Mexico. The problem was, Mexico, a young republic itself, had no intention of giving up nearly half of its land. The flashpoint was Texas. After winning its independence from Mexico in 1836, the Republic of Texas remained a geopolitical hotspot. Most Texans were American settlers who wanted to join the United States. Mexico, however, never officially recognized Texan independence and warned the U.S. that annexation would mean war. For almost a decade, the U.S. hesitated, wary of provoking Mexico and, more importantly, reigniting the explosive debate over slavery, since Texas would enter the Union as a slave state. But in 1844, James K. Polk was elected president on a fiercely expansionist platform. He didn't just want Texas. He wanted it all the territories of New Mexico and California, all the way to the Pacific Ocean. Polk was a man on a mission, and he wasn't going to let diplomacy stand in his way for long. In 1845, the United States officially annexed Texas. Polk then sent a diplomat, John Slidell, to Mexico City with an offer. The U.S. would pay off Mexico's debt in exchange for recognizing the Rio Grande as the Texas border and selling New Mexico and California for up to $30 million. The Mexican government, politically unstable and offended by the offer, refused to even meet with Slidell. For Polk, this was the justification he needed. He had a backup plan. He ordered General Zachary Taylor and his troops into a disputed strip of land between the Nueces River, which Mexico considered the border, and the Rio Grande, which the U.S. now claimed. It was a deliberate provocation. Polk was placing American troops on land that Mexico considered its own. He was waiting for a spark. In April 1846, he got it. A Mexican cavalry unit ambushed an American patrol in the disputed territory, killing or wounding 16 American soldiers. When the news reached Washington, Polk went before Congress. He famously declared, "Mexico has passed the boundary of the United States, has invaded our territory, and shed American blood upon American soil." It was a masterful, if misleading, piece of political rhetoric. The location where blood was shed was disputed territory, not definitively American soil, but the message was powerful and effective. On May 13th, 1846, despite heated opposition from anti-slavery Whigs who called it Mr. Polk's War, Congress declared war on Mexico. The nation was now committed to a conflict that would forever change its borders and its soul. The war itself was fought on multiple fronts and was remarkably one-sided in military terms. The U.S. Army, though smaller, was better equipped, better led, and had a corps of professional officers, many of whom were West Point graduates like Robert E. Lee and Ulysses Grant. They would get their first real taste of combat here, experience that would prove crucial 15 years later in the Civil War. General Zachary Taylor, known as Old Rough and Ready, won a series of decisive victories in northern Mexico at battles like Palo Alto and Monterrey. He became a national hero overnight. Meanwhile, another American force under General Stephen Kearny marched west. They quickly occupied Santa Fe in New Mexico without a single shot fired, and then continued on to California. There, they linked up with American naval forces and a small group of American settlers who had already declared their own independence in the Bear Flag Revolt. By early 1847, California was firmly in American hands. The most audacious campaign, however, was led by General Winfield Scott, or Old Fuss and Feathers, in a brilliant amphibious landing, the largest in U.S. history up to that point. Scott's army landed at Veracruz on the Gulf Coast. From there, they fought their way inland, following the same path Hernán-Cortes had taken centuries earlier, straight towards the heart of the country, Mexico City. The Mexican army and local militias fought bravely and fiercely, defending their homeland with incredible courage, especially at the Battle of Chapultepec Castle, which is still commemorated in Mexico today. But they were ultimately no match for the superior American artillery and tactics. In September 1847, after a series of hard-fought battles, the American flag was raised over Mexico City's Central Plaza. The fighting was over. The war had lasted about a year and a half, and the result was a stunning, if brutal, American victory. The war's conclusion came with the Treaty of Guadalupe Hidalgo, signed in February 1848. The terms were staggering. Mexico was forced to cede over 525,000 square miles of territory to the United States. This land, known as the Mexican Cession, included present-day California, Nevada, Utah, Arizona, New Mexico, and parts of Colorado and Wyoming. In return, the U.S. paid Mexico a paltry $15 million, an amount that many saw as conscience money for a war of conquest. The United States had achieved its manifest destiny. It was now a continental empire, stretching from the Atlantic to the Pacific. But this victory came at a profound cost, and not just in terms of lives and money. The war deeply divided the American public. Abolitionists saw it as a sinister plot to expand slavery. The writer Henry David Thoreau was so disgusted that he refused to pay his taxes and was briefly jailed, an experience that inspired his famous essay on civil disobedience. A young congressman from Illinois named Abraham Lincoln challenged President Polk on the House floor, demanding he show the exact spot where American blood had been shed on American soil. Ulysses S. Grant, who served as a young officer in the war, would later write in his memoirs, "I do not think there was ever a more wicked war than that waged by the United States on Mexico. The acquisition of this vast new territory immediately threw the nation into a bitter, intractable debate. Would these new lands be free or slave? The Missouri Compromise line didn't apply, and every attempt to find a new solution, like the Wilmot Proviso, which sought to ban slavery in the new territories, failed. The Compromise of 1850 was a temporary patch, but the wound just festered. The Mexican-American War, the very event that fulfilled America's continental ambition, also sowed the seeds of its greatest tragedy. The unresolved question of slavery in the territories acquired from Mexico would lead directly to Bleeding Kansas, the rise of the Republican Party, and ultimately the American Civil War. So, was it a war of destiny or a war of design? A righteous expansion of liberty or an aggressive land grab? The Mexican-American War is a complicated and uncomfortable chapter in American history. It forces us to confront the darker side of manifest destiny and acknowledge that the story of American expansion is also a story of conquest. It's a war that defined the borders of the modern United States, but also drew the battle lines for the conflict that would nearly tear it apart. Understanding this war is essential to understanding the nation America would become. Thank you so much for watching. If you found this deep dive interesting, please hit that like button and subscribe for more historical explorations. Let me know your thoughts on the Mexican-American War in the comments below. See you next time.